everybody, welcome back to the Billy Club, the show where we take a look at Marvel's Crimson Crusader and his many adventures starting back in the 60s up through today. I'm Nico, and you guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Nico Action. That's NicoAction.
And I'm Tori Sheehan. You can find me on Twitter at Tori_Sheehan and at Instagram at SMTori. That's Tori with an I. You can also find this wonderful podcast at the Billy Club Pod on all your socials.
And we are here to talk about an unbelievable issue set of issues that it's almost hard to talk about these two because they are like both startlingly stupid and fantastically fun at the same time. And I kind of feel like that's Daredevil du jour for the 1960s. And man, Daredevil's 10 and 11, Tori, woof.
This is like peak where things people make fun of Daredevil for, and also like some pretty decent, like important plot points that will continue to come back to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's of note that this two-part story actually has an unusual distinction. While this two-part story has a first issue edited by none other than Stan Lee, the actual issue itself is written and has art layouts by none other than Wally Wood. We would also get additional layouts from Bob Powell, and we would get letters from Artie Simek. From there, the second issue falls a little bit more in line with the standard, with Stan Lee taking a little bit more of a lead role, and it even promises a new artist for the next issue. I don't know why anyone would want that when Wally Wood was on the previous issue, but we are in a funny place for Daredevil because I do feel like we are on a slippery slope of it's getting easier to make fun of him.
Yeah, he's becoming less omnipowerful and more just like a guy. And while I enjoy that because I love the he's just a guy part of mythology, it's a little unfortunate that it's happening this quickly because it really does make me wonder with every time they genre switch or every time they do these kinds of things, if they really thought that this was the way they could keep going for another 300 issues.
That's my question as well. Something that a lot of characters wind up having pretty early on is a sense of a consistent rogues gallery. You know, for Batman, a lot of Batman's enemies are also either some sort of hyper exaggerated thing. You know, Batman is a man that is a bat. And then there's also the Penguin, who is a man that is a penguin. And then there's the Joker, who is a man that is a clown. And you get a lot of these layers that relate back to the sort of standard of who Batman is. And you sort of get the same thing with Spider-Man. A lot of Spider-Man's villains and rogues are either animals or elementals. Daredevil winds up taking a bunch of other people's bad guys. You know, and even thinking about it, Fantastic Four has a lot of not quite human, whether it's Doctor Doom or the Mole Man. There's this sense of a little bit off from the framework. And Daredevil just sort of gets whoever's available for the issue. And I don't know that anywhere so much as While the City Sleeps, giving us Frogman, Birdman, Ape-Man, and Catman, and not even the cool DC Catman. On the heels of Stiltman, this is getting tough.
Yeah, it's not the best version of like villainy naming. Even the organizer has that feel of like the fixer. And you're just like, oh, guys, we need better names.
Yeah, especially because the organizer leads the organization and it's actually not an organization. You know, when you think about the word organized, right? There's like a chain of command. And here it's just sort of like organizer, animal people.
Yeah.
Organizer, animal people.
Yep.
That's not an organization. That's kind of like a everybody join my I'm such a cool guy club.
Yeah.
And I don't think it has the same effect.
No, it does not. Wilson Fisk would be laughing.
Yeah, I agree.
And also
Wilson
probably
Fisk
murdering all of them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel like Wilson would let them take over some really lame doc somewhere that nobody's looking out for, right? Like, they're going to take over the Weehawken doc or something. And he's going to be like, no, I'm going to come and take Weehawken now. And, you would just, because that's sort of the thing that we get to from the Kingpin later on. A lot of these, for lack of a better term, dumber little villains would be absorbed by the Kingpin. So even if we got an organizer story at issue 212, it would be an organizer story that also had some Kingpin elements. And I feel like that trade-off where, somebody is watching organizer for Kingpin and relaying it back to him at the end of the issue, I feel like that's something I could get behind a little bit more.
Yeah. There's definitely a vacuum in who Daredevil should fight. Because it also feels like, because Spider-Man is Avengers adjacent, Spider-Man for being a street level hero gets a bunch of more higher class villains. And it feels like they don't know what to do with a street level villain. Are the other street level heroes getting the same kind of issues at the time?
There aren't other street level heroes.
Okay. So we haven't met the Defenders. We haven't met anybody. Okay.
Well, because the Defenders in Marvel Comics until 2016 was Doctor Strange, the Hulk, Namor, the Silver Surfer, Valkyrie, Dr. Druid, the Gargoyle. It was like sorcerers. And when Daredevil joins those Defenders, he joins them as sort of like the street level guy who gets real weird. What happened, it seems, is that Marvel realized that nobody was using this name. And there had been a number of failed iterations of the Defenders prior to that. The group that are known as the Defenders are probably better known in comics, maybe as the Marvel Knights, KNIGHT, which was the branding that was used by Joe Quesada's studio, which repurposed a number of characters for Marvel. That Marvel Knights reinvigoration is what gave us the Kevin Smith era of Daredevil, which is responsible for modern Daredevil being essentially such a success. So the trajectory that led them to being the Defenders just had a different name. It's not that it's particularly disingenuous. Though I would point out, Luke Cage has taken the place of the Punisher, and Jessica Jones has taken the place of perhaps Black Widow, who was in that original Marvel Knights lineup. So it's definitely a transformative situation. And I did love your question. I want to point out that we're not far off from major influences like the Black Panther, but Black Panther starts on a world stage. It's a very long time before Black Panther becomes localized to a small location.
Okay. All right. So then it's just that they're having difficulty figuring out how to write for just a street level guy. They're like, well, what's a street level villain? What's someone where you wouldn't be like, I really feel like Iron Man should be handling this.
Yeah, and that's even part of the situation. In order to keep Daredevil at villains where you're like, sure, they're bad. And the fact that we spend 7 pages of issue number 10 just focusing on these villains, and it's so interesting that it's Wally Wood writing, because as a writer, I have a lot of people say to me, oh, you're a writer? Let me tell you the story I've got in. And I feel like when that started happening a lot in college, it was, let me tell you this idea I've had. I would probably have more ideas. By the time you get in your 30s, it kind of becomes, let me tell you the one idea I've had since I'm 17, and I just keep rehabbing it over and over again. I'm not saying that Wally Wood was devoid of ideas, but specifically these 4 animal guys, the French guy is a frog, the one who turns tail and winds up having a second life as an informant is Catman. Ape-Man essentially behaves as a big muscle, while Birdman offers us an opportunity to lift the fight off the ground. I mean, it's a very linear, literal exploration of these physical ideas.
Oh, yeah. However, Catman has a great beard.
Catman's beard is so fucking hot, I can't believe it. Every now and then we hit something in the 60s where I'm like, guys, I see why Don Draper now.
Yeah. I also like that they pulled out an EMP for this. I think that's really smart and forward thinking of them.
Very forward thinking.
Yes. I also dislike that all of their names, like their real names, sort of match the animal they're going to be. So their parents really just fucked them over. And I guess Daredevil was just taking a nap last night, didn't hear all of these crazy police calls.
But that's insane because he hears every fucking thing. He hears what's going on in Tales of Suspense 71. You know what I mean? So I don't know how he's not hearing what's going on in his own fucking mag. But that's neither here nor there.
It's a crime wave, and he's just like, woof, Daredevil will have to look into this after it's already a wave.
Okay, the word crime wave in this title has come to mean something that the word crime wave has never meant before. The word crime wave means like a lot of crimes are happening. Yes. And in Daredevil, the word crime wave is just kind of like a bat signal. You know what I mean? It's just like crime wave, time to get Daredevil, and that's all it really means. But there's something so I don't know.
But it's also called the worst outbreak of lawlessness in the city's history. And I'm like, fam, I know we haven't lived through the 80s yet, but like, I can imagine some other things. No.
Little Matt is disapproving here. But one of the things that gets me down about this is Matt in this two-parter or is Daredevil?
So yes, like let's talk about this now. Let's get this started now because it's going to come up in the next arc of who is Matt? Who is
Matt Murdock?
Daredevil?
Who is Daredevil?
Who is the alias?
And what is the alias? Oh, the alias is Daredevil. You're right. That one is also who? Who is the alias?
But is Daredevil, when he's truly himself, making Matt Murdock the alias? Is he Clark Kent? Is he Bruce Wayne? What is it?
Or is the man a fist of justice and the alias is fitting into society? Like, that's something that Matt has trouble with as a hero. That's something Matt has trouble with as a vigilante. That's something Matt has trouble with as a lawyer, as a romantic partner, as a member of his church's congregation, as a son. These are things that Matt struggles with. But what Matt doesn't struggle with is metering out justice, whether it's by fist or by written word through those hands. He's just the best.
He's the best. But I also think that like we may have to start looking into the idea of like a triad of Matt. That Agreed. There is Matt the superego, who's the lawyer. There's Matt the id, who is Daredevil, and then there's just Matt. And sometimes Matt will have a twin, and we'll get to explore that route. But I think that Matt himself is balanced by these two other sides. And I think to approach him as a duality underappreciates the man that is also in that struggle.
And I think part of that I really agree with you on is best reflected in something I almost can't handle here. This still isn't my Foggy, and it makes me think about the Foggy that I want. And that makes me think about why I like Matt Murdock and why I like Matt Murdock as a brother figure. Mm-hmm. And why, sometimes him having a brother is a really cool thing for the story, because I don't know that I project eroticism onto Foggy and Matt at all times, but I certainly project romantic domestic partnership. There's something to be said about sort of the lost art of the odd couple. Mm-hmm. And how for many years, if you went to war with someone and came home, it wasn't weird if you and your war buddy bought a house together. Mm-hmm. And it just suddenly became weird because we began to exist in this very binary, you're married or you're not sort of world. and it left fewer spaces for less conventional relationships and sort of this idea of non-sexual, but even possibly to some extent romantic domestic partners sort of fell by the wayside. And I think where I like my Foggy and Matt is Foggy says, Matt, I'm going to move in with you because I'm a little bit worried about you as a busy, distracted, blind man living in that big empty house. You're gonna get hurt. Something's gonna happen. Someone's gonna break in. When we all know it's because Foggy really needs his big taking care of him 24/7, and that sort of domestic bliss is what I need from them, and not having it here sucks.
Yeah. The threat of homophobia has really ruined the ability for men to have friendship. I agree with that a lot. I feel like I always hate, I used to say this about shows like White Collar and other things. I was like, I hate when my boys are fighting because it makes me very upset. And this is, this is the beginning of that, of Foggy as district attorney that we just keep coming back to and coming back to and coming back to. And what's really interesting is that the Reform Party wasn't real then, but it is now.
Interesting.
In 1995, there was the Ross Perot movement. You may remember from 94-ish. And he wanted to bring reform, blah, 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 blah. And so it was a national movement. In 2000, it came to New York after the Independence Party severed ties with the Reform Party. So it used to be that the Independence Party and the Reform Party went together, but just separate parties on the ticket. And then they split. And so then the Reform Party came to New York. It had ballot access from 2015 to 2018, which is pretty shocking. That means they had a decent chunk of people who voted for them.
Yeah.
Their last main bastion was becoming the Stop Common Core political party, which lets you know where they ended up. And they actually, Curtis Sliwa, who was most recently the NYC mayor candidate for the Republicans, who lost to Eric Adams, was their 2016 governor thing. And so now it's just one dude. But anyway, the Reform Party, it's real.
Number one, amazing to hear that Jojo Siwa lost governor. Number two,
Curtis Sliwa's a lot. If you think Eric Adams isn't a lot, like Curtis Sliwa's a lot.
I really love that you keep bringing this historical context, because what the fuck is the point if you don't have this city that he's here to protect in mind?
Right.
And building this map of New York as it relates to a socioeconomic picture of elements of the time Daredevils existed has really helped me to not just further appreciate each story within, but to get a better sense of what Daredevil's fighting for. Because I think this is the first really political Daredevil story. And I understand that there are some coponomics to the inherent discussion of superheroics.
Oh, yes.
But Daredevil is kind of the first superhero to be like, I don't trust cops. Like, he's the first one to be like, cops trust me. But Daredevil's kind of the first person to be like, your city comptroller is secretly touching kids. Like, I mean, seriously.
No, but yeah.
So here it is.
Yeah. So that's why this is such a thing, is that like, because basically what they're trying to say is like, this is the third party candidate, and they have their third party candidate. And if he's elected, then Foggy's going to get the New York DA, which I'm not sure if that's how it works, but it's definitely how it works here. I think the district attorney is also an elected position, but I could be wrong. Sure. But basically now Foggy's been invited to do this thing, and Karen's like, whoa. And then Matt is just like immediate, like, shut it down. And I'm like you, this is things my parents do to me, not things my friends do to me. But this is 100% when you're like, Mom, Dad, I got a new job. I'm so excited. And they're like, great. How much is it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what are your vacation days? Oh, Victoria, you can't be that's inappropriate.
And that's the problem, because he's not playing that fraternal role. He's playing a sort of humiliating paternal role.
Yeah.
He's not trying to be Foggy's friend. He's not trying to look out for Foggy. He's trying to, in many ways, protect his self-interest, because something that doesn't get discussed enough is to be a superhero in the Marvel Universe, you must be dynamically selfish. You must be truly self-serving and self-interested. You must have the capacity to run an Instagram and a Twitter like a fucking Kardashian, because that is what it takes to maintain a fucking super secret identity. Look at Daredevil. How often is Daredevil just publicly Matt Murdock?
I mean, it is. We are, I think, like issue 30, we're finally going to get Daredevil unmasked for the first time. And like, for fuck's sake, like, it's just so. I mean, I understand that we're coming at this from a world now where secret identities are sort of passé.
We kind of giggle about him.
But I mean, back in the day, like, I mean, nobody knows Iron Man is Tony Stark right now. Does anyone think? I guess people know who Namor is, but he doesn't have a second identity. People don't know who Peter Parker is. Like,
except when they do, every now and then.
Except when they do. But like, so yeah. So yeah, like, this is, I can understand why Matt is just like, but what about this new third party? What do you know? And I'm just like, why don't you give your bro a second to like talk you through it? Because he literally just walked in and was like, I've been chosen. And you were like, but what do we know about this?
And I think part of the thing where I'm saying you have to be selfish to be a superhero in the Marvel Universe a lot of the time, Matt is just thinking of it as, oh, Foggy, you've never flown a space jet while blind, so you just don't know the real world.
But like, and that's the thing. We haven't been shown that Foggy's like a kind of a just fresh off the boat kind of lawyer guy. He's not a putz. He knows what he's doing. He's just not a genius like Matt, but like, he's solid. He's a solid lawyer.
He's a solid lawyer. He's a smart guy who is making sure that the storefront stays open. Who do you think signs Karen's paychecks? Who do you think makes sure that the power company doesn't shut off the power when they don't get a client for 2 weeks? Who goes through the motions of begging and fighting and pleading and finding money and finding clients? Foggy, in order for Matt to be so flawless and Foggy to be such a schlub in comparison, Foggy must also be spectacular.
Yep.
And so it makes sense that he could get this job, but it also makes sense that he would never suspect Deb is evil.
Let's get into Deborah, everybody. Let's get into everything. Oh my God. I looked down and then I looked up and there was just no head in the frame. And I was very concerned that we've already lost our head. Folks, 1965. Are we in 5 now? 1965 is not friendly to women who might be considering to be looking at the same man. Because here's the thing, up until now, Karen hasn't had word one to think about Foggy unless he was lying in a hospital bed. So why all of a sudden are there little music notes next to her conversation? And all of a sudden, Karen's face is doing things it has never done before. Karen has always looked like Donna Reed on a magazine cover, just always perfect at a different angle, and sometimes a tear rolls down. I have never seen her look so expression filled before, which is great.
But over the wrong thing.
But over the wrong thing. Like, he's just like, she is dangling her half-bare torso onto Matt's lap, and then this brunette shows up and is just like, oh, I've never forgotten you, Foggy. And all of a sudden she's like, how sweet, thank you, dear. And I'm just like, I am going to stab everyone in the throat. Everyone.
It's baffling because for me, reading this way back in the day, I even as a kid, reading this in like a Marvel Masterworks or an Essential Daredevil, however I first came in contact with that first 20 issues or so, I remember thinking, yeah, every animated series ever has taught me she's going to be evil. She's going to be evil.
She's got the dark hair versus the blonde hair.
And there's only room for one lady.
She's like walking like Ursula in her little Vanessa legs. I'm with Matt.
Don't sing into that sea witch's shell.
Right?
Don't do it, Karen.
I'm with Matt. Like, why did Karen react that way? Like, this is the first time where I'm like, yes, Matt, please have this inner monologue because I too am having it.
It feels as though there's a couple of steps being missed. And I think perhaps Wally Wood, as a storyteller, is losing sight of the difference of expression between hard-boiled prose and Sam Spade and Daredevil fruity comics. And I don't think that, Philip Marlowe this ain't. And that's, I think, where things are getting lost, because the second half has a beat that I almost can't believe shows up this early. Daredevil loves humiliating people on TV.
Yes.
Daredevil has this weird fetish for getting his villains to unmask themselves on television.
Oh yeah, he's into it. He's like justice needs not be blind. Show up, honeys. So we then finally Matt hears something. Well, takes till page 8. And so I will say this, we need to track this, the fact that water helps his radar sense this time around. I believe last time it hindered, this time it helps.
Absolutely.
Also, I have a lot of concerns for a man who shows up to a place in a tux with his red long johns underneath and then is going to what? Put himself back on the boat? In what? In what? In what?
In a wetsuit, maybe.
Ooh, boy. Like, I was literally like, if I was on this boat, I'd be like, weird. That man's clothes are everywhere, but there's no naked man. That's strange.
Why does that man look like he looks like a plate of salty crackers. What's happening?
Yeah. He's underwater for fucking forever without any breathing apparatus. And like is he like, when he pulls himself back on the boat, like, is he gonna like just find another tuxedo in a bag that Karen brought with her?
Hey, Karen, you know how sometimes blind people spontaneously lose all of their clothes while they're wearing them and wake up in a superhero's costume and then also need you to give them back their clothes, so you always have to bring a second complete tuxedo for your blind friend when you go on a boat? That.
And meanwhile, she's like, oh my God, what if he did spill wine on himself? Of course he would need another suit.
Karen, pick one guy. You get one guy today. And the only reason that because I am here for Karen, I am here for Karen Page's sexuality. I am here for Karen Page to feel beautiful, amazing, intelligent, desirable, fascinating, and like the competent, brilliant human she becomes. But I am not here for Karen's only two thoughts to be, do I want that one or that one? They're not sandwiches, and so it shouldn't be the only thing she's thinking about. Who could blame her if the only thing she was torn between was like a Monte Cristo or like a really good BLT? But no, it's Daredevil and Foggy, who, you know what, now that I'm thinking about it, are kind of a Monte Cristo and a BLT.
In fairness, she's crushing on Matt, Daredevil, and the idea of Foggy with another woman.
Okay, that last one made it kind of hot, but it's still a problem.
It's a lot of problems. Karen's got, and then also like vaguely in the background is the fact that the Submariner looked really good that one time. And like, also there was this purple dude she was into for a hot second.
You know what? I'm starting to feel bad for her son because she seems to have 99 man bitch problems. She does. Because she only seems to like guys who are like, man bitches. Like, guys.
Yeah. But again, it was the 60s. Every dude there either lived with their mother or lived in a place where they had a housekeeper and cleaner and cook. So what are you going to do?
What are you going to do? I think what we need to do is consider the fact that this does not make sense as two parts. By the end of the first part, I really didn't understand why the organizer was there. And this becomes synonymous with something that Daredevil loves to do, which is the multi-part crime story where like the bad guy is in the background for 7 issues while the henchmen alternate for a couple of issues. And then at the end, it's all of the henchmen working for the bad guy. And then one of the henchmen turns on the bad guy. And like, it boils out over 7 issues.
I remember these.
Yeah. I'm wondering if this is just a product of its time where we're not really thinking about serialized storytelling like that. And perhaps this is Wally Wood being really daring and really, first of its kind for Daredevil. But ultimately, I find myself longing for the issue to end.
Yeah. Like, yes, we get a cool schematic of their headquarters where somehow the helicopter hangar is not even on top of the thing. Like, yes, it's kind of interesting to see the whole thing. Page 10 is where we get the clue. Like, it's a whole, like, it's interesting. The fights become interesting because they're up in the sky, they're down on the ground, they're in the water. Like, it has like a lot going on with it. I don't think political parties would just keep money in briefcases, but that's a me thing. And I really feel like this is I feel like Wally Wood came to Stan Lee and said, I want to write this story. And he had all of the organizer, because this isn't the mastermind, this is the organizer and his 4 friends. And then Stan Lee was like, oh, but remember, we're a romance title. And Wally Wood was like, oh, okay. And then he was like, but then I don't have enough room to tell my whole story. And then Stan Lee was like, fine, we'll make it 2 issues.
But then the craziest thing is on the next issue, Wally Wood is just the inker. He is not the writer. He is not the penciler. He does not do layouts. He is just the inker. And the next issue, they say, oh, new artist coming. Time to move on from Wally Wood. It's, Wally Wood is the guy that gave Daredevil a sense of dynamism, a sense of physical beauty, a sense of visual cunning. Like he made us fall in love with this character. And for his final issue, to have some of the least Daredevil on page, to have some of the least Matt Murdock on page, to inexplicably, now that I'm thinking about it, oh my gosh, the guy who did the secondary job wrote a story about how the primary guy couldn't be happy for him getting a chance to tell the story. Wally Wood wrote a story about Matt Murdock not being happy for Foggy. And then the next issue, Stan Lee takes back over writing. I don't like it.
Let's keep moving. Let's look at the fact that we still only read the daily news around here because the Daily Bugle's not real yet.
And even if it were, I wonder if
black, white, and red all over.
Yeah, I wonder if there's some like, oh, but it's the Daily News. Like it makes it sound a little bit more like hard hitting, like because it's a crime wave. And I wonder.
Oh no, I think the
Bugle is silly.
I think the Daily Bugle is like your Herald, and your Daily News is the little one they shove at you in the subways.
Yeah, take this one, sorry.
Yeah, just like,
these gangsters are giving out newspapers.
It's Hell's Kitchen in the 60s. If they're not snapping.
Or doing well-organized choreography.
Gotta give it up for the movie on that one. The fact that Karen on page 15 is just like, do I really care for Foggy after all? And I'm just like, And then, of course, we reveal that Deborah's kind of in on this nonsense. And we're all just like, oh, no, we had no idea. Womp, 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 womp. And then we just keep fighting. And I don't know.
We spent so long setting up the story that the ultimate resolution offers nothing.
Yeah.
The entire political machinations were done by this Jonas guy. They don't catch him even really because of Daredevil's plan.
Yeah.
It's really just that he notices the ring twice. Daredevil poses as Frogman in a way that doesn't add anything. Catman, having turned on them, doesn't really add anything. I don't have any feelings for Ape-Man the way that I find like Ox kind of hot. Like Ox is kind of drawn me like a big hot boxer guy. And like Ape-Man is literally a dude in an ape suit, and that's not interesting.
Yeah. You're in silly animal costumes for no good reason. I also feel like I am so fascinated because I feel like these two issues are supposed to kind of give us an idea of how Matt thinks about Foggy.
Yeah.
And it's not good.
No.
Like, he honestly is like, oh my gosh, Foggy has been through so many disappointments. He needs to be lied to by a girl to feel better. And I'm just like, you're really making that call? Like, that's what you want for your bro?
And it's such a manipulative decision on the part of Matt. Matt, who of all people should, like, and I have to wonder how much of this is, it's sort of like a weird thing that I know that I see in the gay community sometimes from, let's go with, older gays, where they're like, yeah, but give them time. They'll come around on it. It's no big deal, If your family doesn't want to call it a marriage and they want to call it a commitment, what's the big deal? And like, it's a lifetime of compromise has taught you to teach compromise. And I wonder if a lifetime of Matt feeling like people always treat him like he's stupid when he's not has made him feel he has a unique vantage on being treated like you're stupid. Because blind people aren't stupid, but by 1960 standards, they were treated like they didn't know who they were. And Matt is kind of treating Foggy like a child.
Yeah, 100%. And also, like, when we see them interact on, like, after Daredevil has returned Deborah to Foggy, like, they are, like, having a full-on argument because Matt comes on too strong. Foggy's immediately defensive. Like, everything is so wild. And then they come up with this like stupid, well, I bet, and let's come up with a Scooby-Doo plot. But like, Karen is still being weird about it. She's just like, oh no, what a giant mess. And I'm just like, lady, this is dangerous stuff happening around here.
Yeah, this is like actual political stuff. This is lives being lost. This is crazy stuff involving frog people, which, one more time, that the Frogman was French name.
Did you not like that? You're really going to hate the original Power Rangers and the choices they make.
Well, I think what's funny is okay, so let's go for it. Power Rangers is aimed at children and never really, in those early MMPR years, if we go by the Zordon era, which is, technically through the Great Wave, so we need to go through season 7. So, count everything through In Space and Lost Galaxy and, sort of the Astronomer running as Pink Ranger in the next season. If we take all of that, we can objectively look at it as a children's show designed for children with children in mind. If we take a look at some similar programming from around a similar time, you can take a look at Animaniacs by Steven Spielberg. Now, I know we're talking about two different mediums, but we're going to be talking about children's shows that were programmed onto, Fox Saturday morning cartoons. So when we take a look at Animaniacs, there's the infamous fingerprints joke, which is a joke to say that they're telling Dot to finger the artist formerly known as Prince. There is all of Minerva Mink's nudity behind changing screens. There is the fact that Rita and Runt are literally meant to be a representation of Les Mis. The ideas in Animaniacs might have been directed at children, but the show itself was created with adults in mind. It was created such that the silliness and the childhoodery, it was loud and brash and colorful and fun, but the artistry belonged to the adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
This book is pretending to be a hard-boiled adult crime story, but it is playing out with the nuance of a Power Rangers episode.
Yeah.
And it is an you cannot ever write something without knowing your audience, even if your audience is you, so that you can learn from what you wrote to write better next time. No audience in mind on these two issues whatsoever between two writers.
Yeah, I continue to think that they're just like, let's see what genre works best. Like, is this going to have it? Is this going to have it? Is this going to work? Like, I know where we end up, but it's very difficult to watch them go through all of this right now and try to figure out what it's going to be. And like, we get the cover image again, like when he's fighting the Hawkman.
Yep.
We get all of these like false things of who is it, who's the guy, is it the guy that we have, is he pre-recording, like what's going on. And like it's convoluted in a fun kind of way, but because the way, like, the twist is decent, the setup is not.
I agree.
It's kind of where I land.
It winds up looking like he's fighting the village people at one point, because there's so much going on and there's so much costumery that the costumery of it, like the plumage and the fur, it winds up feeling a little too Donatella at the Oscars for me. And I'm not sure where my eyes are meant to go in some of these sequences. Bobby Powell does a really great job capturing what's so great about Wally Wood's Daredevil and then translating it in a way that Wally Wood is able to ink it. And I really love the inks, the colors. You know, this is something we don't talk about enough on this show, but considering that this book is just flats.
It's just flats. It's just flats. And yet it's so much fun.
There is thought put into flats.
I know. There's no shading. It's just flats.
And that was industry standard until the 70s, and then a little bit of shading. And it wasn't until, digital colors that everybody's like, oh yeah, shadows. But like, I'm telling you, for flats, the colors in this book are legendary.
Yeah. Yeah. They're really well thought out. They're really smart. They really give you the atmosphere. It's all good things. So highly love that. Also highly love how Matt's like, ooh, real quick, while I'm Daredevil, let me tell Foggy he's a good boy.
Yes. And there's something about the elegance of considering for the first time, it's not just what people interested in the other party thinks that matters. We don't just care that Karen has feelings for Daredevil. We also care that Daredevil's not really interested in sustaining a relationship with Karen, even if he wants to put his billy club in her holster. He is still not eager to maintain a relationship with her.
No.
And we don't really talk about that. We just talk about Karen liking Daredevil. We don't really talk about how Daredevil treats Foggy. We just talk about the fact that Foggy's like, you hear about this guy? He's amazing.
Or you hear about this guy? He's the worst.
Yeah. This is the first time that there's a sort of awareness of a bigger picture of the interplay of relationships not being a one-sided, one direction.
Yeah.
But then there's the ending, and I hate the ending. I want to give it up for the nearly Marcos Martin levels of Daredevil with the radar sense toward the end of issue 11. It is so good. Those colors are phenomenal with that green opposite on that same page. So you get that beautiful symmetry, which plays us into that yellow and blue. And I think there's something about the Starks of the yellow and the blue with the auburn of Matt's hair and the red of Karen's outfit. I think it's a really excellent visual color symmetry. But the fact that we know that he doesn't even stay away that long, this is such fake season finale cliffhanger shit. I don't even know what to say about it.
100%. I mean, it's also this. So with something that we skipped over is the fact that this issue is the first one that's going to start going monthly. So we're moving off the bi-monthly. We're moving into the monthly. So January, you're going to get another one. So they're kind of like, if we build it up a little, maybe they'll get excited. I think this based on the conversations that they had before, you can understand how this one also goes off the rails so quickly. But the fact that we only have 200-ish pages of these folks, and maybe 30 of them is on the three of them alone, like this is very, very fast. And especially for Matt to have such fuck this, I'm out energy is very new and very confusing.
Because Matt doesn't show anger as a rule. Matt internalizes self-conflict and manifests it as a sort of a manic unreliability. Matt manages his anxiety and stress by quickly changing pace. If he is expected to do something almost in a chaotic good way, he's going to do something else because it's still protective and helpful, but it's not what he needed to do because doing what's expected of him is currently like choking him to death.
Yeah. And I mean, for it to all be like set off by a cheek kiss from Karen to Foggy, I know this is I mean, when people are like, the CW shows are so stupid, they're just constantly like making out with someone out of nowhere, and I'm like, they've been doing it since the 60s, bruh. like this is what it always is. Someone decides that to be super sweet back for someone, they just give them a little mwah, and then all of a sudden everyone's like, whoa, you're not Italian, you can't do that.
And it's such a dominant force of so much classic comic bookery. Both Warren and Scott had feelings for Jean. Both Peter and Norman. Yeah, Warren.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Right? I know. Both Peter and Harry, I almost said Norman Osborn, but both Peter and Norman had a thing for Gwen. But no, both Peter and Harry have a thing for MJ. And Daredevil and Foggy and Matt, I guess, all have a thing for Karen. And you would think that in the two-parter, they gave us Deb. We could maybe get away from the shenanigans, but we don't get away from them in the way you expect. Matt going out on his own, it feels a little too close to the I'm going to go to the European castle and get my eyes poked with a laser. And it feels a little too close to almost Namor in some ways, that we're going to see Kazar next. I do not love this two-parter. It's probably the low point of the series for me. On the heels of having loved Stiltman so much.
Yeah.
This really is a bummer.
Yeah. It is. It could be more. I wish it wasn't so silly, weird. And honestly, when Deborah is like the second woman to have like real lines in this, and she has almost none of them with Karen. And also she's just like a red herring the whole time, and she comes back, right? Like Deborah's Deborah. Okay, just checking, because Matt's got 8 wives, and I presume Foggy's got 6. So we'll see more of Deborah, but I'm unimpressed with how we continue to misuse Karen, and I'm with you. I think
her at all.
And I think you're 100% right. Like every 3 to 4 issues, they're like, Matt has to go somewhere. We need a change of scenery. We can't keep drawing. Everyone's mad about straight lines. Let's go get some leaves.
Well,
what did the fans have to say, Nico?
I was going to say, well, I have to let you know, we're not alone in some of our opinions.
Oh, good. Do tell.
From the letters page of Daredevil number 10, contained again in the Daredevil Omnibus. So I'm not like pulling out I have some copies of, some 1960s Daredevil, but I don't touch them because my hands are disgusting and full of oils. In the letters page of Daredevil 10 from Larry Brown in Bay City, Michigan, Dear Stan and Wally, I'm writing this letter in a fit of fear that you guys are going to mess Daredevil up.
Oh, well.
You made the first step with issue number 8. No, the art was great and the story was very good. My gripe is with Daredevil's cane and headgear for his sensory radar blips. Essentially, this person wrote in to say, Daredevil should get rid of his gadgets.
Don't they know anything about toy merchandising?
Want us to let you in on an inside squabble, Larry? The reply includes,
oh no.
Sturdy Stan agrees with you. He is also opposed to so much gadgetry. But Winsome Wally really digs these hoked up appearances. It's literally full of that many typos. And being Wally's the guy who has to draw them, Stan went along with him. But
for 3 issues.
How the future goes.
Jesus Christ, they really were just like threatening Wally Wood this whole time.
So then we get to issue 11's letters page.
Also, wait, number 8, that Stiltman was 9, so 8 was...
I believe Stiltman was number 8 because number 9 is Klaus Kruger.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Well, I need you to hold on to everything you hold dear for this letter from Daredevil number 11. Dear Stan, Bill Warren of Oregon writes.
Ugh, West Coasters.
Daredevil 9 was rotten. Not because of the art, which, despite the shift in artists, was fine. Not because of the story, which was all right, except for the bit with the Mad Duke trying to destroy the world. That struck me as a Diablos ex machina, to coin a phrase, brought in for no other reason rather than to kill off the eye surgeon. What was wrong with it were Daredevil's out-of-character wisecracks and the extension of his paranormal powers. The wisecracks had been in previous issues, to be sure, but to a thankfully much lesser extent. You now seem to have confused DD's and Spider-Man's characters. With Spidey's, the wisecracks are fine, for they follow his character. But DD should not make them. He is just not that type at all. Please drop them or drastically reduce them in future issues. And the extension of his powers is becoming ludicrous. For instance, how on earth could he possibly tell there was a walled fortress from below him when he was coming down in a jet plane? This could obviously not be by sound, for the jets drown out any sounds that might penetrate through the thoroughly soundproof cabin and his radar sense, which I don't like anyway. The infusion of it makes him vastly superior to all other heroes. Does not seem like he could penetrate walls either. You should have him make efforts to achieve his goals. Now he is too similar to all others. Before he was something much different and far better. A handicapped man overcoming his handicap with diligent effort.
No.
Now,
no.
Everything comes much too easily.
No.
You have reached your 2 peaks in the issue about the Matador and the battle with Submariner.
No.
You are now at your lowest ebb. Please bring DD back to where he belongs, at the very top of the comic stack. And you know what? In their defense, the response is
go fuck yourself.
A little bit, actually. Whew, we feel like we've been spanked.
Yeah.
But before we start acting on your suggestions, Bill, we'll have to wait and see what our other D&D disciples have to say, because judging from our Zooming sales, we'd guess that most of the public is completely hipped on our sightless sensation.
So, I mean, do we have numbers? Because I guess going monthly is a good sign. That means that like they want more money, so they're gonna go for it.
So the official numbers are really hard to come by. The company that is best responsible for those numbers in an available way, Comicron, really doesn't go back before 1984. You can get some year-end numbers on some big sales figures. The other thing that is very difficult is depending on who says the number. Sometimes you hear X-Force #1 sold 2 million copies. Sometimes you hear it sold 6 million copies. Sometimes you hear it's 8 million if you include all of the ones shoved in toys. Sometimes you hear that it's X-Men #1 that's the bestseller at 2 million certified units. And comic numbers get a little weird. The other thing to consider is comic indexing in modern era is done in terms of a 100 percentage point, where 100% of total sales that month is always reflected by the sales of Batman. The book Batman represents 100% of sales because its sales are so consistent in terms of the overall industry sales. Everything goes up or down in percentage of its expected sales chart position from there. So depending on what numbers you're looking at, sometimes you think you're looking at raw sales, but you're looking at percentages. Sometimes you're looking at market share. It can be a little difficult. Right?
Has it gotten better since?
Yeah, it's gotten a little bit easier.
We're not all measuring it on, percentage points of a Batman comic.
Well, no company releases their digital sales is also a thing. So it makes it much harder to be sure. We know the companies are saying, look how well our physical books are doing, but they're also saying, look how hard we're struggling physically. So it's tricky, also with the pandemic, and then shortly thereafter, the paper shortage and the shipment delays, we wound up seeing some pretty major events get a little sideways, and some books came out of order. So I think right now, all said and done, trying to map the history of sales, it's one of those things where like, I just want to sit down with a guy that owned a shop and ask him.
Yeah.
Because it's so hard to know.
Yeah.
But Tori, we are sitting at the end of Daredevil's first 12. And
took us 2 years.
Yeah. We've done some bonus issues, like some Spider-Mans. Well, a Spider-Man and a panel. And we've done 2 Fantastic Fours. And we're about to head into what becomes a time-honored Marvel tradition, having your story involve Kazar and the ways in which that dramatically transforms the universe. I mean, he's still appearing in his own books, like Kazar, Lord of the Savage Land, just came out this past year, super terrific book by Zach Thompson. So I know that this guy makes it for another 60 years, but man, this feels like a huge waste of Daredevil's time.
Yeah, this is, and it's also very interesting, as we'll find out. This is an important plot point for Kazar.
Yeah.
Like a major plot point. So fascinating that it happens in Daredevil.
Because
like it's not that that was a question I was going to ask. Kazar doesn't have his own book.
He jumps from title to title. He does an issue of X-Men. Then he does 2 issues of Avengers, then he shows up in 3 issues of Daredevil, then 2 issues of Spider-Man, and he gets his story told across everyone else's titles. That's what a lot of characters did when they didn't have their own books. They just sort of guest spotted a lot until they found a home. Mostly they found a home in the Avengers pretty quickly. And because Daredevil wasn't a very big seller, it didn't make a lot of sense to have them guest spot in Daredevils a lot. Kazar just, I think because they wanted to do a 3-part story, because they wanted to do something with a lot of layers, you don't want to blow 3 issues of a big title for that. But using 3 issues of Daredevil, especially when he's just going monthly, that's only like missing 1 Daredevil, really, because that would have been the February issue. But instead, it's January, February, March.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, Nico, I continue to be deeply astounded by 1960s Daredevil.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to have so many more things to say about the next trio of books.
It's a triple header, man. We're going to have to talk about 3 issues in 1 hour. I can't wait to see us do it.
We've got so many cat jokes.
It's going to be like Gilmore Girls levels of words per minute.
It's going to have to be, because I can tell that we are long.
Well, Tori, until we return, man, it is such a pleasure climbing New York City's best skyscrapers with you. And of course, looking out for all the organized crime I can hope has a heart attack. But until next time, I think we have a specific command to keep in mind.
Oh yeah, everybody. Stay fearless.
Stay fearless. We did it!